So with the release of Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission locally, I wanted to go ahead and talk about the hot topic about everybody like kind of wondering whether or not Global will get these cards. So we're going to talk about that and see if whether or not this does mean, and again, it's my opinion, so I'm just going to attack it from that scenario. We're going to talk about that, if that means that Global will get this. And just for the record, before we even get into it, I don't think it's as simple as, oh, we have heroes now, so now Global just guaranteed to get it at some point. I don't think it's that simple. I think there are other intricacies and just different things in there that need to be discussed, so we'll talk about that. But also on a side note, because now we do have some form of Dragon Ball Heroes outside of Japan, it is also now possible we could start seeing Dragon Ball Heroes specific Dokkan Festivals. We've seen Heroes characters get Dokkan Festivals in the past, but a lot of times because they were tied to other games. Broly, SS3 Vegeta, Bardock. Those are characters from Heroes, but also made their way into other games such as Raging Blast and Xenoverse. So it didn't really wind up mattering. So now that we have this, again, that is a possibility. We could see some crazy stuff come out, like SS4, Zeno, Vegeta, either Goku, whatever, Dokkan Fest. I don't know. It could be pretty wild, and Global shouldn't be held out. The reason why they wouldn't have done that stuff on JP is because they do want the stuff to translate directly to Global, which is why there has never been a Dokkan Fest that did not make its way to the Global version of the game. So, all right, let's jump in. Like I said, I don't think it's that simple. I don't think that it's guaranteed just money that Global's going to get it. I don't think it's that simple. I think that, and I think it's important to understand this, from their perspective, the licensors and everybody associated with Dragon Ball Heroes, they were not interested whatsoever in marketing it outside of Japan. So the way that worked was, if there was a figure or something like that was coming out, they would literally change the logo. The Japanese release would have the Heroes logo if it was a Heroes figure, and then the US release, or whatever, the local release, the English one, would be marketed as Dragon Ball Super. Now, part of that is because of the familiarity, where they never tried to do it in the past, so it's like, well, what is Heroes? You know what I'm saying? Because we don't have the arcade machines and stuff like that. But they really weren't interested in marketing it outside of Japan. But they are literally trying something new here. They've been trying to bring Heroes out this way for a little bit. They even had the arcade machine come out as part of the Dragon Tour, I believe. Stuff like that. So they're trying. So that's why, you know, in the past, that's something to understand as far as the way that this was handled. So I don't think they're going to go back and bring out these old banners. So we've been looking at this banner here while I've been talking. This was the original Dragon Ball Heroes banner. Came out in 2016 or so. It came out a couple of times. They reprinted it, but regardless, our original Dragon Ball Heroes banner. We did from there last year, wind up getting this. Well, last year, because it's New Year now. But that being said, we did wind up getting this, and then we wound up getting the newest iteration of the Dragon Ball Heroes banner most recently. So what they've done is they have made it to where JP has an exclusive cast of characters, right? Now, most of Global has exclusive characters too, and they'll continue to do it as long as they keep the World Tournaments the way they are for one. At least they'll keep that. But most of what Global has does translate over at some point. Like Hit just made its way over there. Those SS3 Vegetas are still on Global right now. Eventually, they should come to JP. Should. And there's like, I don't know if Monaka came yet, stuff like that. But JP has literally a cast of characters Global doesn't have at all, which is why people are wondering about this. Now, I do think that it is most likely that we will get Heroes content. I thought that it would be a good idea to have some sort of campaign launched alongside the release of Super Dragon Ball Heroes on Global and JP. I thought that would have been a good idea. But of course, there could have been other things that we're not aware of, such as licensing and just different things. Maybe they have that planned, but it's not always as simple as, oh, we want to do that. They've got to make sure that everything is in order to be able to release that. So that could be what happened, and maybe they didn't get done in time. Maybe they had other content they had to put out beforehand, like Hit, whatever the case is, right? So I thought that was a good chance, but unfortunately that didn't wind up happening yet. Could happen anytime soon. We'll see what happens. But aside from that, now that we do have that, I think regardless, it's more likely than it's ever been that we will wind up actually getting Heroes content on Global. And I don't think they're going to go back and release this banner. If they really want to penny pinch, and it's Bandai, I wouldn't be surprised. They could do the whole sequential banner release thing. I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll probably just skip to the most recent iteration or this. Now, another thing that wound up happening was they started releasing these banners around the time of the anniversary. So 7th anniversary banner, and then the 8th anniversary banner. That is in December, I believe. So November, December, in that area. Another thing that could potentially happen is Global might not get any Heroes content until then, in which case they might wind up going ahead and releasing a banner between both versions of the game as far as Heroes is concerned. Now, there are characters that are not in the Switch version of the game as of right now, such as Bobbity Boo Absorbed, Boo Bobbity Absorbed, excuse me. So there are characters that haven't made their way into Heroes. So it comes down to whether or not Heroes as a name, as a brand, as a property does allow for them to translate any character over to the global version of the game, because that's where it gets kind of weird. If there are characters that aren't even in our global quote-unquote Heroes game, how do you translate those over? Do they come over as part of the batch? And this is why little stuff like that actually winds up mattering. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but from their perspective, it could be a factor that makes it where they actually wind up don't even releasing the banner as a whole, right? But again, could come in the future in the form of DLC to the Switch game and stuff like that, to where it makes a difference. So, speaking of making a difference, I think, again, just to recap that segment, I think it's possible, more possible than it has ever been, that Global will actually wind up getting these things to release on their version of the game. I couldn't tell you what order. I couldn't tell you if we'll have to wait till the end of the year for the anniversary. For Heroes in general, I can't tell you anything like that, but I do think it's more likely than it's ever been. So there's reason to, I wouldn't say expect it, but be optimistic as far as getting hero content is concerned. Another little wildcard thing as far as Heroes cards go is they're not in the general pool on JP. You can't summon these units outside of their collaborative banner. So that being said, they could do something like they did with Fighters, where the units are in the general pool at some point. Probably now. I don't know why they didn't do it initially. It could have been a licensing thing or something like that. But now that we have that, they might wind up doing that on both versions of the game. So that's something to keep an eye out for as far as the general SSR pool goes. Because again, they did do it on Fighters. They did it on Fusions. It's something to keep an eye out for. So moving on, though, as far as that's concerned, again, I think they're coming. I don't know when. I don't know how. I think they're coming. On the subject of Dokkan Fest units, and by the way, before we proceed, these are the other banners. I actually literally scrubbed all the way back to 2016 to get some of this info for you guys. So look at these banners, man. On the subject, though, of Global, a lot of this stuff is in the game already, actually. You can't get it because it's locked, but it's there. I'm pretty sure I could probably have Hydros get it, to be honest. But regardless, this guy is fully translated. So are some of the other cards he came out with. By the way, he didn't awaken on first release. Of course, if Global gets it, he would awaken immediately. And these units are here, but they're not fully translated. Her passive is done. The passive name isn't. She's not fully done. You see, that's how it is. Here's this Gohan. His passive isn't done at all, but his links are. So little stuff like that. So they're here. They're just basically pending release. So they could come. Like, they really can. They're in the files. All they got to do is push a button. Okay, so let's talk about festivals. So when it comes to Dokkan Festivals, I think now, like, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. I think I did. We did have Heroes, quote-unquote, festivals prior, where we had characters that were in Heroes, but the reason why it was okay was because they weren't just in Heroes. They were in other content, like Raging Blast or whatever the case is. We have had that stuff. Albeit scarcely, we have had it. Now, the issue with the Dokkan Fest is I don't know how the licensing side of it works, and I have to keep bringing that up because it's a big deal. It's actually a really big deal. Like, a lot of this stuff gets put into pending, into process for months on end before we even see it in the game because of stuff like that. So, in terms of a Dokkan Fest, it could be some scenario where outside of a collaboration, they're not allowed to use hero stuff. That could literally be the case, in which, if that's the case, we will never get a Dokkan Fest. Probably. You know? So, if they're able to use the units outside, then we'll see. Because, like I said, the reason why we wouldn't is because outside of a collaboration, we wouldn't get it. If we did get it, then we'd need a collaboration, or that unit would just never come back as a release unit in the banners, even though it's a festival exclusive. So, stuff like that. Now, it could be that simple. Now, I do think that, again, like the other games, it's possible that these units just stay in Dokkan. They just stay in Dokkan. They're in the general pool, stuff like that, always summonable. Or summonable in case of a Dokkan Fest unit whenever available. So if that's the case, then I wouldn't think there would be any reason, assuming it's a character that's in World Mission, I wouldn't see any reason as to why they would not produce a Dokkan Festival that would allow for the units to be between both versions of the game. That's the main thing. They don't want to produce Dokkan Fest if it can't translate to their global version. You may think they don't love the global version. They really do. They really do. They don't want to have stuff that can't make its way over there. So that being said, that's most likely what's going to happen. It would have to be a character that is available in World Mission, I would say. I mean, there's 1,000 cards in there right now, so I don't think that's a hard thing to do, right? It's not hard. It's not at all hard. And then from there, they should be able to do that. So I personally do think, just to summarize before we get out of here, that we will get Global getting the Heroes content. I think it's more likely than it's ever been, which is a great thing. I think that in the terms of a Dokkan Festival, that is still a very big wild card. I don't really know if I expect that or not. I'd have to see how some of the releases go. But if they start the trend, they'll keep it going. And that's actually a really cool thing because it allows for Dokkan to extend its life even further. They can literally push out different characters that literally never got released. Again, there's so much in Heroes they can dip into. All the Xeno versions of characters like Cell and just like all of this stuff. There's so much content in Heroes they can dip into, and that's always going to be something new. And then if they have new events, that leads to new Dokkan events, which could lead to new categories, which could lead to new Super Battle Road stages, and just a ton of other stuff. So it's a really big deal, and I think they'll really probably try to push towards getting that, okay? So that being said, thank you all for tuning in. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you think that is likely? Have an awesome day, everyone, and I will catch all of you guys in the next one. Take it easy, everybody.